Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Mr. Merrigan's Moments in Geography. We are going to continue our discussion on Mexico today. We are going to look today at a little bit more of the history of Mexico. As far as our learning target, we're going to be able to order. So, yes, I'm going to want you to understand, especially for my students, the order in which these civilizations occurred, and then describe, of course, the events that take place in Mexico's history. The groups we're going to look at today, and these are in order. You're going to talk about the Olmecs first, then we're going to get into the Mayans, and of course the Aztecs, Spanish colonization, and then towards the independence of Mexico. So, beginning, of course, with the Olmecs, who are among the very first people to settle in Mexico. The Olmecs existed right around, first examples we have are around 1200 BCE, before Common Era. So that's about 3,400 years ago. And one of the things that is very notable about the Olmecs is what they bring to this region, which later on will be redistributed to places like Europe. So, one of the things they're quite known for, you can see in the lower left hand corner here, are their very large stone statues. They're also known for their jewelry that is made of jade, but they also grew corn, or what is sometimes referred to as maize. And maize is going to make its way into what is now the United States, and later is going to be brought back to Europe. Sweet potatoes are also going to be introduced, starting with the Olmec, certainly beans and tomatoes. And so, what the Olmec were doing is they were draining these wetlands for their fields and for their settlements. And so, what we see happen with the Olmec is that they start to disappear around 400 BC. So we're talking about almost 800 years in this region, and their impact can be seen in later Native American civilizations, but also certainly on European contact, particularly when it comes to some of these food items that get introduced to places like Europe. Second group I want to talk about are the Mayans. They're going to live on and near what we refer to in Mexico as the Yucatan Peninsula from roughly about 250 CE to 900 CE. So they're not going to have the same um, longevity that the Olmecs are going to have, but they are going to have certainly several important discoveries and things to add to even modern society. But among them are the development of a 365-day calendar, which we still use today. Mayans created this in order to accurately hold religious holidays, but it is something that certainly has been adapted and continues to be used today. They also built huge temples similar to the pyramids, except with steps. And also similar, of course, to the Egyptians is the creation of hieroglyphics. And this, again, is a form of writing that uses signs and symbols. And so those two certainly would have been made independently of each other as they would not have had contact, and also certainly centuries apart from each other. One of the cool things about the Mayans, too, is that if you um, find your way into the Yucatan Peninsula and you're in some more rural areas, you're still going to hear the Mayan language. So it certainly has existed for thousands of years, and again, it's still spoken in some places in Mexico. Next group I want to talk about are the Aztecs. So certainly when it comes to modern Mexico, this is the group that probably, along with Spanish, have had the most influence on modern Mexican culture. So they existed in central Mexico from about 1200 CE to about 1521 CE, and they established a fairly large empire. Their capital city is known as Tenochtitlan, and this is where Mexico City is currently stands today. And you're going to see that Tenochtitlan is also going to be an area that um, the Spanish are going to see as important and going to need to see themselves conquer. The Aztecs refer to themselves as the Mexica, and so the term Mexico comes from this identity that the Aztecs had for themselves. Now, the Spanish refer to them as Aztecs, not the Mexica. So certainly you can see the divide there. They also, much like the Mayans, created large stepped pyramids. For my students in our textbook on page 199, you can see an example of that. And today, like we said at the beginning, Mexico's food, a lot of its crafts, language has a lot of roots in Aztec culture, including the stadium where the Mexican national football, aka soccer in the United States, um, the stadium is called Aztec Stadium. So certainly a large part of that identity is still there, even today from the Aztecs. So getting into the Spanish, okay, getting into our conquistadors. So in 1519, Hernan Cortez lands on Mexico's Gulf Coast. So again, it would be the East Coast. And he brings with him 600 soldiers, and he is going to again make his way towards the capital of Tenochtitlan, and he's going to attempt to defeat the Aztecs. Now, he's not going to be able to do it alone. Now, certainly disease plays a role in the loss by Montezuma and the Aztec people, but one of the things that the Spanish also do is they learn a little bit about the local politics and how some of the other tribes weren't big fans of the Aztecs or the Mexica, and they used those tribes against the Aztecs, and they were able to defeat the over 6 million residents within about 2 years. And so that is officially what brought the Aztec Empire down, is its battles with the Spanish and the conquistadors. So Mexico is going to become a Spanish colony, and that's partially why you see so much Spanish influence. Certainly, language is going to be a big contributing factor. Disease, unfortunately, is going to kill a lot of the native population in Mexico during this time period. They're also going to bring, of course, the religion. And of course, we know that the Spanish are driven by the 3 Gs: gold, God, glory. And among God is that introduction of Catholicism. So if we look actually at Mexico today, 90% of the people of Mexico are Catholic. So it's a very Catholic nation today. All right, let's get on the road to independence. So in 1810, Miguel Hidalgo leads a peasant revolt against Spain. People are rising up. The Spanish, of course, have been taking out a lot of wealth, and the people living in Mexico are desiring more autonomy, more independence. So Hidalgo actually gets captured in this particular war. He's going to serve, and he's also going to be executed by the Spanish, but he's going to serve as a martyr, as another person to give more motivation to Mexico for its road to independence. And so eventually they're going to gain their independence, and a republic is going to be established in 1824. That territory includes modern day Mexico, Texas, California, Arizona, certainly Utah, Nevada, and New Mexico. However, a lot of that territory is unfortunately going to be lost to the United States in the Mexican-American War. And for listeners who have checked out the U.S. History edition of Mr. American's Moments, we talk a little bit about that particular war and how that territory gets lost. So certainly a lot of what is now modern day Mexico is established between that and the Gadsden Purchase. So in 1910, Emiliano Zapata, he leads a revolt against the ruling upper class. There certainly was a lot of economic disparity and a big wealth gap between the rich and the poor. And so Zapata leads this, and that leads to a redistribution of land and wealth to attempt to make things more even in Mexico. And again, that's shortly before World War I for world history fans. And so just to kind of compare between 1824 and today, this is kind of what you see as far as the different areas of Texas. So certainly you've got the Rio Grande or Rio Grande serving as the border between Mexico and much of Texas, and then again got between the Mexican cession here and then the Gadsden Purchase, the new borders. So ladies and gentlemen, that's going to about wrap us up for students, my listeners. If you want to just make sure that you're kind of picking up on some of the important things, check out the check-in quiz here about Mexico's history. Certainly for the extra credit question, make sure that you look back if you need to. For my students, make sure that you ask any questions that you have, and make sure you're following along as we talk more about Mexico. For those of you who are just listening, really appreciate you. Thank you for listening. That is going to wrap up this edition of Mr. Merrigan's Moments in Geography. Have a wonderful day, everyone.